Okay, in this video I'm going to be showing you the easiest way I know how of to make your own bezel art, homemade, do it yourself, really simple. You don't have to have a degree in theoretical physics or advanced mathematics. You don't have to be some kind of professor. This is going to be the easiest way I know how to teach you how to make your own bezel art. Now, if anyone has seen any of my previous bezel art videos in the past, I've tried to show you some things along the way, but I was learning at the same time. It was a new thing for me, and I realized that a lot of my older videos don't necessarily keep it simple enough. Alright, they don't really show you the correct way at all times because I've learned some things. And that's why I want to make this video. This video is just going to be basically the easiest, quickest, most accurate way possible to do this, and it's all going to be in layman's terms. Everything, all the hard work is going to be done for you. Nothing advanced in this video. So let's get started. Now, the first thing I want to tell you is that if you don't already have a program called GIMP, you're going to want to get that. That is basically like your free Photoshop. So you're just going to Google GIMP, alright? And GIMP is going to be your best friend. I am so glad I have GIMP on my computer. And once you've Googled GIMP, you basically just go ahead and grab it. You can get it through a torrent or directly, alright? It works on any kind of operating system, and it is totally free. There's no catch. These are just some really nice guys to be offering this for free. I just am glad that they do, because it has come in handy for me so many times. And I'm going to show you why you need GIMP. You might be like, well, why can't I just use Microsoft Paint or something like Photo Filter or something else? Well, I'm going to show you why you can't do that. Let's see. Let's just take a look at some already known working good bezel art to start off with. Okay. Like, for example, let's look at my Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting bezel art. Let's go ahead and load that up. Okay. Now here's my Street Fighter 2 bezel art. Here's another view of it. Everything's fine, no problem. Let's say when you're making your own bezel art though, you wanted to use Microsoft Paint instead of GIMP. And let's find Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. Here it is. Now I want to make a backup of the original because I don't want to ruin it. This is just going to be for demonstration purposes. Let's open this up with Microsoft Paint. Okay, and let's say we just want to make some small little change or something. Just as an example, let's pretend you were doing some fancy artwork. This right here is beautiful artwork, okay? It's not a scribbly line, it's some beautiful thing that took you hours to do, whatever. Okay, and then you save it, okay? And you close it, and then you go to run MAME again. Okay, so let's load it up. And you go, well, wait a minute now. I can see the scribbles over there, the artwork, the fancy artwork, but why is the game screen covered in white? I can't see the game. Because Microsoft Paint doesn't handle the transparency you need. Okay, so now let me go ahead and put my original art without the scribbles and the big white area. Let's put that back into place. Okay, so that's why you need GIMP, because when you make changes and edit with GIMP, it's going to keep that transparent center area intact. Okay, and it's free, so win-win. Alright, now first thing I want to cover is aspect ratio of games. Let's say you go to play a 4:3 aspect ratio game. In this example, we're looking at King of Fighters, okay, 94. This is a 4:3 aspect ratio game, alright, and circles are circles. Everything looks the way it's meant to be, but a lot of people's bezel art, let's just look at some random bezel art. Okay, let's just look at some random bezel art. Let's say you just grabbed I don't know, this bezel art right here online. You found it and you said, I want to use this bezel art. Well, maybe that's not the best example, is it? I don't know. It really doesn't matter to me that much. Screw it. Let's just use this as an example. Open with GIMP. Alright, it's going to start opening up here in a second. Alright, this is some bezel art you found online and you're really excited and you really want to use it. But I want to show you something. This is a 4:3 snapshot from MAME, the original aspect ratio of a game. And all 4:3 games are going to be the same. So it didn't have to be altered beast, you know, for the example to make sense. So let's go ahead and copy this image and paste it over here in this bezel art and watch what happens. It seems that the bezel art was too wide, and now the game screen, if you want to keep it the original aspect ratio, is covering up the bezel art. Okay, well that's not good. But you know what MAME's actually gonna do if you were to just use this bezel art the way it was made by the creator and try to use it? It wouldn't display your game over the top of the bezel art like this. Instead, what it would do is it would try to shrink the game screen down in order to make room for that bezel art. It would have to shrink it even more. It would have to shrink it even more. Oh, now we're getting close. Almost there. Alright, and this is what your game would end up looking like when you booted up MAME. And you might not notice. Maybe you're not that picky and you think, well, there we go, I found some bezel art online, I put it in, everything's fine. But you know, the more astute of you might realize that your game screen's aspect ratio is being smushed. Your circles are no longer circles, now they're ovals. Something's not right. And see, this is an extreme example of this bezel art I found that obviously is the incorrect size, but you'd be surprised. Pretty much everybody's bezel art that you can find when you're out there looking for bezel art, pretty much everybody has it wrong. They pretty much always have the wrong size bezel art. You just can't find anybody who makes the correct size bezel art, the size that you would want to have the original game screen just fit without being smushed. So that's why one of the main reasons why I got into this bezel art creating in the first place, because I don't want my game screen to be smushed. I want to have some attractive bezel art and I want to keep the original aspect ratio. So basically that's what I'm here to do, and I want to keep it really easy. So what I'm going to have under my video, I'm going to have some links to a Dropbox of mine, and you're going to find these zipped folders. One of them is going to be for a horizontal template, which is 4:3 games like what we were looking at here, and another one is going to be a vertical template, which is going to be 3:4 games like your vertical games. And once you've downloaded those from the description area under this video, you're just going to extract them anywhere you want, desktop, whatever. Okay. And these are going to be simple templates, and they're going to do all the work for you. So let's go ahead and look in the 4:3 horizontal template that I'm going to provide. Okay. And let's go ahead and open this with GIMP. Okay. Now what we have here is we have a space for artwork that is the correct size for a 4:3 image. I'm going to go ahead and prove that to you right now. Remember this 4:3 image? This is before it got smushed. This is what it's supposed to look like. This is the proper size. Let's go ahead and copy it. And let's just see how it fits with my template. What do you know? It fits perfectly. Now you might see a little bit of black edges around here, around these corners. That's the HLSL effect. The image was captured when HLSL was enabled, so I have a little bit of a screen curvature effect. But it's the exact proper aspect ratio. Your circles are circles. It's not getting smushed. It's 4:3. Or in other words, This area right here is actually 1440 by 1080. I'm on a 1920 by 1080 monitor, so 1080 is my height and 1920 is my width, but the game's width only needs to be 1440. No more, no less. And I'll go ahead and show you why real quick. Let's go ahead and pull up our calculator here. And remember, the game screen is 1440 by 1080. So let's do 1440 divided by 4. And I'm going to explain why we're doing that in just a minute. 360, remember that number. Okay, let's do the height. 1080 divided by 3 equals 360 again, the same number. So what were we using? 4 and 3. We were dividing by 4 and 3, and we got an even number both ways. It's a 4 by 3 aspect ratio. Okay, so that's why 1440 by 1080 is the correct size for the 4 by 3 aspect ratio. And if you were using, let's say, a 1366 by 768 monitor, you would need 1024 by 768, because it also divides evenly. I'll show you what I mean. 1024 divided by 4 equals 256. Okay, 768 divided by 3 equals 256. So that's a 4 by 3. 1024 by 768 is the proper 4 by 3 aspect ratio on a 1366 by 768 monitor. This is how you figure these things out. I'm on a 1920 by 1080 monitor, so my game screen is always going to be 1440 by 1080. And you can actually find that out in MAME itself if you don't want to trust math. You know what I mean? Who wants to trust math? So let's just look at MAME itself. Let's open a game, and what we're going to do is let MAME show us what it believes is the proper game's 4 by 3 aspect ratio. So we'll go to video, and then we just go to standard 4 by 3. It says right there in parentheses 4 by 3. Okay, let's go ahead and pause this. Now you can see this is what the standard 4 by 3 aspect ratio is supposed to look like. This is what MAME is saying. It correlates with the math we just worked out as well. Watch when I put one of my bezel art pieces on. You'll notice that the size of the game screen is not going to shrink or get smushed in any way. See with it on, see with it off. The game screen stays the same. The only thing that changes is that there's artwork on the sides, and if you notice carefully, the very corners of the game screen get a little bit of a shadow effect. And I'm going to show you what that cool shadow effect is in just a second here. In the template that you'll find in the description area under this video, you'll find this folder. This is that shadow effect. You'll notice, see the shadowy effect? Okay, I just think it's nice. I think it looks really good, and it helps the image to look a little more 3D. It kind of pops a little bit. Okay, and this is 1440 by 1080 as well. See, it says dimensions 1440 by 1080. So this isn't going to affect the aspect ratio. It's just going to add a cool little effect I think everyone will enjoy. And the artwork is allowing a blank space in the center, 1440 by 1080. And as long as you open it with GIMP, you do get the transparency intact. See this transparent area. Alright, so now all that's done for you as far as you have a template that has transparency. You're going to have GIMP, this program right here. It's going to be free. And the size that the artwork needs to be is already worked out for you for a 1920 by 1080 monitor. The size is 240 by 1080. It always is. It always will be. Now here's a little tip with GIMP. Whenever you're going to start using like select tools and stuff like that in GIMP, click on View and click on Snap to Canvas Edges. And what that does is it kind of magnetizes it to the edges there, see? So that's going to save you time. Alright, now I'm just going to show you the size of this. It's 240 by 1080. If you zoom in, you'll see that it is exactly on that line. See? Okay, so the size of your art is always 240 by 1080 for this 1920 by 1080 image. And there's a couple ways that we've been able to determine that. One way was like I showed you earlier, simply by dropping in the actual 4x3 1440 by 1080 game screen onto this template and noticing that it fits perfectly. It's not too wide, it's not too narrow, it just fit right in there, remember? That's one way to determine it, but you can also use basic math to determine this. In case, for example, you're on a monitor that's not a monitor size I'm covering in my video. Let's say you're on a 16 by 10 monitor and I'm not covering that in my video, and you think, well, how do I know what size my artwork needs to be in order to go right to the edge of the game screen but not beyond it, so that it's not going to smush my game screen and mess up the aspect ratio? I don't know what size my art needs to be. Well, here's another way you can figure that out. Pull up our trusty calculator again. Now this is 1920 by 1080. 1920 is the width of the pixels. So what you can do is 1920, that's the width we're working with here, but if you're using a different width monitor, you just put your width in. And we're going to subtract something from this, and the number we would like to subtract is the width of the game screen when it's in its standard 4x3 aspect ratio. Now we've already shown you how to determine that. Like, you can go launch MAME, select 4x3, and it will give you the 4x3 image on the full height of your monitor, whatever size monitor you have. And then you can just take a screenshot of that, like use Fraps for example, take a screenshot or whatever you want to do to get a perfect screenshot that does not distort the image. And then after you've got your screenshot, you can measure the width of it. Here we have 1440 by 1080. So you take the width of the original aspect ratio, in this case 1440, okay? And then in your calculator, you start with the entire width of your full monitor, and then you subtract the width of the game's original aspect ratio, in this case 1440. That's going to equal 480. Now what you want to do, since there are two sides for bezel art, the left and the right sides, you want to divide this extra space in half. Divide by 2. 240. That's how we come to our number. So in this image, all right, this selected art area is 240 pixels wide. So you don't have to really guess at it. You don't have to try to put artwork in here and then see how much space is left, or put the game screen on in here and see what space you're working with. You can just use a simple calculation. You take the width of your monitor and you subtract the width of the game, as long as it's the proper width of the game and its native resolution on your monitor, and you're going to have a number, and you just divide that number in half, and that's the width you're going to have of available artwork space. Okay, so even if you're not using a 1920 by 1080 monitor like I am, you can still use this basic formula to determine how much space you should have on either side. Okay, but if you are using a 1920 by 1080 monitor, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, because you're going to find under the description area of this video this folder right here, and all the work is done for you. You already have a perfectly sized template with a transparent area for the game to be displayed. You already have a lay file that tells MAME how to lay out the artwork and all that stuff, and it's already written for you. You're not even going to have to worry about that stuff. And you have a cool little screen mask effect. The only thing you're going to need to do is, instead of just having green side art, which is fine if you want that, you're going to want to make your own art. So this is basically a blank canvas for you to play with, a blank canvas for you to paint on. And let's go ahead and show you an example of that. I mean, you could just basically, you know, manually draw whatever you were drawing, and then you save it in GIMP, and it's going to show up that way in the game on the sides. But, you know, that's a kind of a poor example. So let's go ahead and show you a little bit of a better example. Okay, let's say there's two examples I want to show you. The first example is going to be to assume you found some decent bezel art somewhere online, created by someone else, and you want it to work for you, but maybe that bezel art either didn't have an appropriate lay file, or it wasn't the appropriate size like what we found earlier. A lot of people just do not seem to create bezel art that is the appropriate size. Okay, so let's go ahead and say you wanted to, this is probably the best example. Let's say you found some art for a horizontal game. In this case, let's go to here, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, since that's what we were looking at earlier. Oh, I've already probably replaced some of these. Okay, well, maybe that's not the best example. Street Fighter 2, perhaps? Yeah, this might work. Alright, well, let's just grab any one of these. I'm just going to open this up with GIMP. Doesn't matter, it's just an example. Okay, here's some art that you found online somewhere, alright? How do I get this to work? We have our template, okay? The dimensions are correct. We have our lay file that is already working and doesn't really need any changes. The only thing we need to do is add our own artwork in. And we have this bezel we just found randomly somewhere. Okay, and let's say we want these side pieces. Okay, so all you gotta do is just kind of, and by the way, here's a little tip in GIMP. If you hold Control and then move your mouse scroll wheel, that's a zoom. So it can kind of help you out a little bit just to save you some time. So let's get ahead and do what we were talking about earlier, where we do View, Snap to Canvas Edges, because that makes your selecting process a little simpler, because it's going to magnetize the edges on its own. Let's say you want this side art, okay? Look at what size it is, 615. That's too wide because we know our side art has to be 240 by 1080. 240 by 1080 is about here. So what we've discovered, see this little teeny area? That's not so great. I mean, sure, you could use it like this. You could go edit, copy, come in here, edit, paste, and that would show up in the game like that. And it would work. But let's say you don't want it like that. Let's say you want more of the full thing. So in that case, what you would want to do is change this to a different size before you begin the entire thing. And here's a decent way of doing that. Let's just grab it. Okay. Copy. Edit, copy. Okay. And then paste as new image. And then we're going to click on this little resize tool. And we are just going to change it to say that it's 1920 by 1080. There we go. Scale. Okay. I don't think it officially scaled it, did it? No, it did not. It was acting up. Here we go. Alright, something about like that. Oh. I want it to be a little bigger, actually, on purpose. Hang on. Alright. Edit. Copy. Edit. Paste as new image. Alright. So now we have something that's already been resized to something more reasonable. I'm going to say View, Snap to Canvas Edges. Alright. And what we're looking for is 240 by 1080. You can use these over here to just kind of adjust that if you like. Okay, and now let's kind of move it around in here. Something about like that. That should be fine. Edit, copy, edit, paste. Okay, there we go. Now you can see that you're getting more of the art by doing it that method. All right, it's not just zoomed in. So this is one way to do it. All right, and then I could just save this and let it, you know, be my bezel art, and let it replace the template that I have here, and then that would show up in Street Fighter, and that would be my bezel art. So that's one way to do it. There are some other ways too, so let me go ahead and show you some other ways. I'm going to just Control Z for a minute here. There we go, back to our default template. Alright, there's some other ways too. Besides just taking other people's bezel art, the imagery, and fitting it into those areas that we have available on the sides, you can also like get more creative than just finding other people's bezel art and resizing it. You can search Google Images. So let's say we're doing Street Fighter right now. You just go to your Google Images and you find something inspirational in here that you can use. You know what I mean? You can even put like Street Fighter comics, Street Fighter poster art, Street Fighter anime style art, whatever you want. I've actually used that kind of method a lot, and what I've done is ended up creating folders full of art as reference material. So I can just go through and look at my reference material and pull what I want to create my own bezels. And these are just things that I found on Google Images. You know what I mean? And what I'll do is I'll just end up selecting an area of it, 240 by 1080, and then simply pasting it into place over the template. Okay? So for example, let's go ahead and do that just as an example real quick. Let's say, I don't know, we like, which one do we want? Let's go with, let's go with this Chun-Li here or something. Okay, so what we're going to do is open it with GIMP. Okay, alright, now this was a PNG image I found on Google that already had transparency. And what's cool about those ones, when you're on Google Images and you find a PNG that has transparency already, you can just right click, copy, alright, and then paste, and you'll notice you just paste it over something like that, you know what I mean, without having to have like some yucky white background or whatever. And if you use the resize and you link it together so it holds the original aspect ratio, you can make it under 240 width if you want so that it fits. Let's move it back over where it goes. See what I'm saying? And a lot of the artwork I've done has incorporated a technique like that. You know what I'm saying? So let's go ahead and undo this. Undo that. Undo that. And I'm going to show you one that I made already using that exact same technique. So let's go to my MAME artwork, Street Fighter Alpha 3. Remember that Chun-Li? Here's one that I created using that same Chun-Li. You'll recognize her. I just flipped her over the other way and fit her in there. In fact, let's see, artwork. Let's see, snapshots. Street Fighter Alpha 3. I don't have a good example of there, but I'll show you the finished product. Street Fighter Alpha 3.
This is Street Fighter Alpha 3.
I don't remember which one it was. There it is. Yeah. I added a little Capcom plasticky bezel piece too around the game screen on that one. But you recognize that Chun-Li over there on the right, right? I just found this from Google Images, okay? And, you know, that's how you can do it too. You know what I mean? You find something on Google Images, and then you know, I slapped it on a background that was 240 by 1080, and before I slapped her on there, I colored that background in kind of a creamy, papery textured color. And the reason I did that, because on the other side, you'll remember I had a cami, this cami right here, and this cami had a creamy kind of color background to begin with. It didn't have the transparency. Like, remember Chun-Li was just Chun-Li in a transparent area, and that's how I found it on Google Images. Well, this cami image already had this kind of creamy texture behind it, this color. So I put her on there first, and then I used the ink blotter tool in GIMP to steal this color and then just paint bucket that entire other side to be the same exact color, and then I was able to take the Chun-Li and just zoop, drop her on over there, and boom, there's the artwork. See, that's how you can make some interesting artwork, you know what I mean? So hopefully that gets your creative juices flowing. And it all starts with just having this very simple basic template to work with, all right? Now, the reason I chose green instead of like a white or a black blank color for your template is because a lot of the artwork that you might find on Google Images or wherever might already have like a white or a black background, and when you're trying to put it on here and resize it, I'll show you like an example of what I mean. Let's go ahead and grab something. Let's go in here. Work. Handler spreader or something. Okay, this will work. Alright, so let's say you have this art. This is mine, by the way. I created this. Oh yeah, snap to canvas edges. Always remember that, because then it'll stick to the edges for you automatically, and you don't have to sit there and fiddle for days to try to get it the right size. Okay, edit, copy. So with my background being green, you can do this. Let me just show you what I mean. I'm gonna undo the snap to canvas edges just to show you what I mean, to save you trouble like this. Let's say you're trying to put the artwork over there and you think you got it pretty much right, but then if you were to zoom in later, you'd see, oh, I didn't have it all the way at the edges just right. If this had been black instead of the green, it wouldn't be obvious. It would blend in with this. So the reason I make it green is to help you to know if you really have the placement aligned properly. And remember, one way to help with that, instead of having to sit here and manually fiddle around, go view, snap to canvas edges, and now watch it just kind of, you can just zoop, throw it in there and it just kind of snaps, you know, to that edge. So that's why I did a green background, because that way it'll stick out like a sore thumb if you haven't covered the area perfectly with your artwork. Okay, now let's say you wanted it to be a blank background. Remember my example of the Cammy and Chun-Li where it had a creamy background and all I had to do was put Chun-Li on it? Let's say you have some art like that, where you have art where all you'd like to do is put it onto a background. Okay, instead of having like a full image that is already 240 by 1080 that you just have to get on there, let's say you have some free form image. All right, this isn't some kind of big rectangle. This is a free form object, and you want to put that somewhere, but you need a background for it, and you're upset that my background is green, and you're like, why you give me green? What if I don't want green? Of course, all you really have to do is paint it, of course, whatever you want. You know, if you want it to be, you know, black or something, you can do that yourself. Or let's say you want it to be a texture or something. Now GIMP does have some textures already kind of like included or whatever, so like if you really wanted to, you could just click one of these textures and go to pattern fill and do like that. That's an ugly pattern. Yeah, these are some ugly patterns. See, it's better to get your own patterns. You know how you get your own patterns? Really easy. I'm going to show you what I mean. Google images, and what kind of pattern do we want? Let's say we want, I don't know, paper texture pattern or something. And so we're searching images for that, and I'm going to say we want big ones. Large. Okay, these are pretty dang big. If you really wanted to, yeah, it don't matter. Any of these are fine. Which one? I want something that's kind of rough enough so it's going to stand up on a YouTube video so you'll actually be able to see. You know what I'm saying? And I want it to be at least 1080 tall so it's not like doubling itself. This is a good example. Alright, view this. Oops, I didn't mean to visit the page. I don't need to do that. Just view the image. Alright, now watch. You're going to hit copy image. Okay, and then back in GIMP, you've copied that image, so it's in your clipboard memory or whatever. Watch this. You can do what is it, this one? Oop, no, clipboard. Yeah, there it is, clipboard. The top left one, clipboard. It looks like a white square. That is always just whatever is in your copied memory. So remember, we went to Google Images, we found a texture we wanted, and we just right-clicked and went copy image. So if you select clipboard, and now your paint bucket is set for pattern-filled clipboard, boom. Oh, it's still copied Chun-Li. That's what it is. Dang it, man. Okay, edit, undo. For some reason, it's still on Chun-Li. So let's try that again. Copy image. Alright. Okay. Maybe we should do save image as, put it on the desktop just to make sure we're getting this. Okay. And edit it with GIMP just to be sure that maybe it's all within GIMP. Okay. So I'm going to hit edit. I'm going to hit copy. Okay. Now it's in the clipboard. There it is. I guess it has to be within GIMP. Okay. So you open up an image within GIMP. You hit copy. Now come over here. Paint bucket tool. It's set to use pattern fill clipboard. So now when you click in here, there's that texture. Now it's just some random ugly texture I found on Google Images, but you can find whatever texture you want. In case you don't like the default textures, you go on Google Image, search for a while, find whatever texture you want. Now that was an ugly texture that I found on Google Images, so don't use an ugly texture. But find something that actually looks cool. And then you could do this whole idea, you know what I'm saying, of you know, having something good as a background instead of the plain green or whatever, you know, whatever texture you want. And again, if you have something that's freeform, you know what I mean, you can just resize it so that it's, if you want it to really fit in there, so that it has to be beneath 240 pixels wide, and then you know it's going to fit in there. Okay, get your movement selector here, and you can put it wherever you want. Now remember, mine was bigger. See, if you don't want it to be so small or fit in there like that, you know, of course you can make it bigger, and you can have some of it perhaps cut out like what I was doing. Mine was even bigger than that, but let's just show you an example. Let's say this was what you did, and you were like, there it is. When you launch your game, this piece of her skirt will actually cover up the game screen. You'll see like all the game screen, and then you'll see this piece of skirt hanging over like a 3D effect. And in a way, that can be cool. And some people do make bezel art that way. I've done a few of those in the past. But let's say you don't want that. All you got to do is get your select tool and highlight this area that's reserved for the game screen. And to make sure you know you got it right, you just manually over here punch in 1440 by 1080, starting at the 240 pixel mark. This is the 240 pixel mark right here. And as long as it's 1440, it's going to end at this pixel mark right over here. So there you go. Now all that's highlighted. Edit and just hit cut. Boom. Cuts off the skirt nice and clean. So you could still have a big image, and you could cut off things that might be hanging on over. So these are some techniques that I've gone through just to show you guys ideas of how to get your creative juices flowing, how I do what it is that I do. Like for example, on this one that I did, you know, I have gone to Google Images, and basically I've gotten a lot of resources from Google Images. When I wanted to make Alien vs. Predator art, I was like sitting there on Google Images for a good 30 minutes or so, just let me see if I can find some cool inspirational art that I can use to try to create bezel art from. And I would open like Alien movie on my with Windows Media Player and just take snapshots straight from the film. I never ended up using the Queen, but I was considering it. And I just found images, you know what I'm saying? And once I had some images, you know what I mean, I was able to take said images and incorporate them into this space, this 240 by 1080 space that I have to work with. And what I came up with, you know, was, you know, because, you know, how big can you really make this if you only got 240 by 1080? You can only make it so big before a lot of it's cut off. You know what I'm saying? It's a small space to work with. So I had the idea, if I want to keep like this whole alien egg, for example, it's pretty small, and look at all this space above it. So that's why I was like, maybe I can put another small one and another small. It fills up the whole space, and you're seeing a couple things. I don't know. that's where the direction I went in with that particular piece of art. But these are just giving you ideas, you know what I'm saying? The fact that you're gonna be able to just think of a million different ways to fill in the blank space, you know what I'm saying, is it's gonna free you up to do whatever it is that you want to do. You're gonna have this template and you're just gonna figure out what you're gonna fill this stuff up with. Now, after you've filled it up with something, and let's say your artwork is complete, you're going to go to File, Export As. You're not going to go to Save. If you go to Save, it saves the project, but it doesn't actually save the file onto your computer somewhere. Export As is the way it really saves. And once you go to Export As, for the purposes of this situation, we're going to, let me rephrase that. Before I even show you this, let me show you something else. Remember I said this all starts with you having a few basic raw materials, one being GIMP, the software editing program that allows you to save the transparencies that you're going to need that. That's one thing you're going to need. The other thing is in the description area, you're going to have those two zip folders that I'm going to provide you. One for horizontal 4x3 games, one for vertical 3x4 games. Okay, you're going to need those. And once you get those, it's going to open up and look like this. Now, here's the thing that makes it really, really easy for you so that you're not going to have to sit there scratching your brain trying to figure out how to get things to work. I've already included a lay file that has all the coordinates, the bounds of where the game image should start, horizontally, vertically, how wide is it, the height of it, you know, the screen mask the same, where it starts, the height, the width, the height, and all these things, the coordinates, the elements for where the artwork can be found, what it's called, where it's going to be, how big it is. The layout work is already done for you. Now, if you just want to take the quick and easy route, like I suggest you do because it's going to work and it's very easy, I would suggest you just use this basic stuff without changing any of it. All you're really doing is putting your art on top of the green here, and then you're going to save. Now, because you're going to use this method of basically just grabbing some art, slapping it onto the green, and then saving, and then assuming it's going to work, you need to make sure that it's still named the same thing. It has to be named art or whatever, because in the lay file, it's going to be looking for something called art.png. Here's the art.png. If you change it to say something else, you know what I'm saying, like you save it and rename it to anything else at all, like let's say even if it's art in caps and you save it like that or anything else, it's not going to work because the lay file is looking for this specifically. So what I'm saying is do not rename it. You need it to say art, just like that, .png. Okay, it needs to be all lowercase, just needs to say art. That way it's just going to work as is. Okay, so back to this again. Let's say you've done your artwork, you love it, you think, oh my god, it's the most beautiful thing ever in the entire world. I absolutely love it. Ooh, this is my beautiful artwork. Yay! Right? Oh my god, it's so beautiful. Yay! And you spent days and days building this perfect, beautiful artwork. Now you're ready to save it. Okay? So you're going to go File. You're going to say Export As. Okay? And you're going to think about what location this is in. You don't want to accidentally save it in the wrong place. So for here, I'm on my desktop, the horizontal template folder, art PNG, there it is. So I'm just going to highlight that. So there it is. It gives me a preview of what it was to begin with, our basic template. And I'm going to let overwrite that. So it needs to say art.png up here. Alright, and then down here, I want to select PNG. Okay? And then go ahead and export, and it's going to say, you're sure you want to replace that template? Now, I would recommend to you, if I were you, to actually, once you've downloaded my template, to make a backup of it. You know what I'm saying? That way, every time you go to make new artwork, you still got that template that, you know, sitting there in its natural vanilla form. You know what I mean? So in order to do that, let's say I'm making artwork for the game called Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. So I want to call a folder called Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. Oops, Hyper Fighting. There we go. And in that Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting blank folder, you take the contents of the template, copy, paste. There you go. Now you still have your template, and it's not, you can use the stuff from the template, but when you go to finish your art and you're saving it and all that stuff, you still have your backup basic vanilla template for later for another game. Okay, so now we have two folders that basically have the same stuff inside of them. We have our template, and we created a new folder with the same stuff inside, and we named it the same name of the ROM, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. Okay, so now let's say we were working on art for Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, and here it is, and we want to save it. So we're going to go export as, okay, and then it's our Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting folder. Alright, we're going to overwrite art. Don't rename it, just overwrite it. PNG. It has to be PNG, that way it keeps transparency. If it's JPEG, it will lose its transparency and just see white where the game's supposed to be. Okay, it has to say art, because that's what the lay file is looking for. Export. Do you want to replace? Yep. And then all this stuff you can leave default. Just hit export. Don't worry about it. Okay, there, it's done. Now, inside of a folder called Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, we have some art that we've made, and we have a lay file, and we have this cool screen mask effect. Now all we got to do is open up the lay file and put where it says name of ROM up here, the name of the ROM. In this case, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. And if you're not sure what the name of the ROM is, it's very easy to find out. All you got to do is go into your MAME folder, go to your ROMs, okay, and then it'll say the name of the ROM, because they're all listed the way they're supposed to be for MAME to be able to find them. See, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. There's another way as well. If you don't want to, if you got a lot of ROMs in your folder and you want another way to find it, in MAME itself, all right, right here, the directory. So for Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, where is it? Where is it? Here it is. See right here, it tells you SF2HF. That's the name of the ROM. Okay. So that's what it needs to say here at the top. SF2HF if we're doing artwork for Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. All this crap down here, you don't even have to worry about it. You don't even have to touch it. Thank God. I've figured out all that for you. Don't even worry about it. You just put the name of the ROM up here, and then you're going to hit save. And then you can close it. So we're done. We basically, all we did was we opened the template in GIMP. We did our artwork in the green areas. We exported it as art1.png, and in our lay file we just put the name of the ROM at top, hit save. Now we have finished artwork for Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. So let's go ahead and test it out in game. So you go to your main folder, you go to our artwork folder. Now you would just drop this Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting folder in here. It doesn't even have to be zipped. Now I already have Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting artwork. I want to make a backup of it. I don't want to lose it. So I'm going to say cut, and then I'm going to make a backup folder, and then I'm going to paste it in here so I don't lose my artwork that I've made. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So now let's say, we're ready to drop it in our artwork folder. Here it is. It's all done. Take it, just drop it into here. Okay. Now, when we go to launch MAME and we go to Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, we're going to see our fancy bezel art. There it is, with the transparency intact. So we can see our game screen. We can see that the game screen is the original aspect ratio. It's not being smushed in any way. And we can see our wonderful, beautiful bezel art that we spent years slaving over. Man, that's some gorgeous bezel art right there. I'll tell you what, man. There you go. So it's that easy. That's the method. I'm going to include those zip files in the description area. You're going to download them. Inside, they're going to basically look like this. You're going to have a template, a lay file, and a screen mask. Don't ever change the name of any of these things. Make your art so that it fits on the green. Export it as art1.png. And in your lay, just put the name of the ROM right here. And don't mess with anything else, and hit save and drop it all into your artwork folder, and you're going to be good to go. However, a couple little things I should point out for troubleshooting purposes. One, like I said, you're probably going to want to make a backup, okay, of the templates, because it's easy to just open up the template, start working, save over this stuff, name it, the name of your ROM, name the folder itself, the name of your ROM, and drop it in Artworks and call it a day. Then when you're happy with that and you go to do it again to make a new piece of art for a new game, you don't have your template anymore. Your template has now become Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting artwork or something. So make a backup of these vanilla templates, right? And then just copy them as something else so that you'll be able to work on something and you've still got a fresh template for the next game. All right, another tip: when you want more than one piece of artwork in a game, for instance, when you open a game and you hit tab and you notice I might have a couple of views to choose from, all you gotta do is have more artwork in here and add more into the lay. I'll show you how that's done, okay? So let's go into our artwork folder, MAME, artwork, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, and there was our artwork. Let's say we want to add one more in. So what I'm going to do is just grab one that's already made to save time from something else. Let's go to, oh yeah, that's the same thing. Let's go to my backup. Where's my backup? Here's my backup. Okay, here's one I had already made before. So let's go ahead and copy that in there. There we go. Now this is called something different. This one's called Art 1. This is just called Art. So let's say you've got two pieces of art. Alright. Only thing different you got to do is inside of your lay file, you need to account for having more than one art. So MAME basically views things like its art or an effect or any of this stuff as elements. It calls them elements. So right now it sees that it has basically just two elements. One that's the art PNG. Two, the screen mask effect, right? That's all it finds. It doesn't know about this one I just dropped in. So I need to add that element into the element list right here. So basically what I'm going to do is basically just copy this, right? Okay. And then create some space for it here. Paste. And instead of it just saying art here, I'm going to have it say art 1 because that's what the new thing's called. And it can't be artwork in quotations. Artwork in quotations is the same thing. This needs to have its own element name. So this will be called artwork 2. You know what I mean? Alright, and then down here in this area where it actually tells MAME how to mathematically lay it all out, you have to have a second view if you're going to want to see more than one view. So this area where it says view name bezel art and it has all this stuff, right? That just accounts for the first image. We need a whole section to account for our second image now. So starting from view name right below all the element area, we're just going to hit copy all the way down to the view where it ends inside the arrows. Hit copy. Okay, give it a little space for a new section, hit paste. Now this one is going to be the second one, okay? So bezel art 2. Okay, now all this you don't even have to mess with except for this one that says where to find the actual art. If we left that alone and it just said artwork, it would go up here and say artwork. Okay, I guess I need art.png, and it would find this. So you'd have two views when you hit the tab key and they both be showing the same art. So artwork 2, this one right here, that's looking at art1.png, that's called artwork 2 element. So down here in this section where it says bezel element artwork, it needs to say artwork 2. See? So now we have one that says view name bezel art, bezel element artwork. Now we have another one that says view name bezel art 2, bezel element name artwork 2. Okay? There we go. It's done. So now we just hit file and we hit save. Now we've added a second piece. Okay, so now if we go to launch Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, we're going to have two to choose from. Okay, get that volume down. Okay, now if you go to video options, you're going to see you have bezel art and bezel art 2. Okay, personally, even though I made this one, personally I think this one's way better, don't you? Oh my god, this one's so much better. But either way, you'll notice that if you turn the bezel art off and you're just using 4x3, the game screen is the same size no matter what. It doesn't change because our bezel art actually cares about the original aspect ratio, unlike most bezel artists out there in the world who don't give a crap about the original aspect ratio of the game. And that is how you make bezel art. Leave comments, questions in the comment section. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it made some sense. Oh yeah, last thing before I go. I did all this explanation about the horizontal 4x3 type games. You know, games that look like this. But what about for your vertical games that look like this? Like in here we got Karate Champ. It's the same concept. You're going to have a folder that I give you that's going to be a template for vertical games. It's going to have its lay file, and you're just going to have to, once you're done, put the name of the ROM at the top and save it, and that's it. And it's going to have its template file. All you do is paint in the green area, export it as art.png, just like you did for the horizontal style, and that's it. And you'll be able to have great looking bezel art for your vertical games that actually looks good. You know what I mean? As far as like you have a proper aspect ratio. The game's not going to be smushed too skinny. It's not going to be stretched too wide. So it's the same formula for vertical games. And you'll find a template for both vertical and horizontal in the description area. And remember, if you have a different size monitor than 1920 by 1080, just use the concepts that were discussed in this video, but you will need a little bit different numbers in the end. Like if you have a different size monitor, remember we discussed by taking the full width of whatever your monitor is and subtracting the full width of a 4x3 aspect resolution game or a 3x4 aspect resolution game, you're able to have a number that you can divide in two to discover the size on the ends. The only reason you're going to have to do that extra work is if your monitor is some other kind of resolution besides 1920 by 1080. Then you would have to do that little bit of extra work. Alright, because I don't have templates pre-made for other sizes. I only have templates for 1920 by 1080 because that's the size of the monitor I'm on. Okay, but hopefully if you watch this video you'll at least understand the technique in order to create, you know, the right sizes for your template if your monitor is not 1920 by 1080. And once you've done so, your default.lay will need to have a few different numbers. For example, when we discussed a monitor that would be 1366 wide by 768 tall, we found out that the correct game screen for 4x3 would be 1024 by 768. So you'd have to come in here and the game screen right here would have to say 1024. The height would have to say 768 for the game screen and the screen mask effect. The artwork would say the full size of the artwork file, which would be of course 1366 by 768. Then the last thing you have to figure out is coordinates. For coordinates, GIMP makes it really simple. Like for example, let's just go ahead and see this little cross that we have as our mouse cursor or whatever. Let's zoom in on an area at the very edge of the green, all right, and center that in there as best we can. And you'll notice at the very bottom left down here in this little white box, it's going to have numbers that change in real time as I move the cursor. So highlight the edge and you know 240 is that number. 240 is the x coordinate. As I go up and down, you see the number that's in the 80s right here next to it. You'll see that number changing, and that's the vertical coordinates. So the very top of an image is always going to be like 0. See, it says 239 by 0. If I wiggle over it, there we go, 240 by 0. So where the game screen starts for 1920 by 1080 is 240x, or in other words 240 horizontally, and 0 vertically. That's where it starts. Okay, so 240x, 0y. That's how in the lay file you tell it to start at 240x, 0y, and then it starts, you know, displaying the game image at 240x and 0y, and it goes stretching all the way down to the bottom right. And as it stretches down to the bottom right, it's going to stop at a point where it, you know, knows to stop at 1440 by 1080. So in other words, it's going to stop in this corner right here, which if I can get it correct is 1680 by 1080 because it's taking into account that over here is the starting point on 0x. But since we're starting at 240x, you got to take 240 off of 1680, which equals 1440. So anyways, that's the math stuff I didn't want to bore you guys with. I didn't want to make this complicated. But I know somebody in the comments will be like, hey man, I got a 16 by 10 monitor. These coordinates are for 1920 by 1080 monitor. How do I know what coordinates to make for X and Y? So that's why I'm covering this part at the very end of the video for people who need the troubleshooting steps because they don't have a 1920 by 1080 monitor. So my lay file, which is written for 1920 by 1080 monitor and uses 1440 by 1080 original aspect ratio game size, these numbers won't be valid for somebody on a 16 by 10 monitor, for example. They have to find their own. But thanks to that little bit of coverage I just went through, like describing how an X coordinate and a Y coordinate work within GIMP, and how even just using your cursor will tell you down here what your X and Y coordinate is that you're currently on, you should be able to determine where to tell it is the top left of your game screen starting position, and that will be your XY coordinate, even if you are on a different size monitor. And you should be able to know how big your artwork is by dividing or subtracting the width of the game screen from the full width of your monitor and then dividing by 2, so you have one on either side. So hopefully that covered everything and wasn't too confusing, guys. And good luck making some beautiful bezels. As a little footnote to the end of this video, I did want to say thank you for watching the whole video. I really appreciate people that actually take the time to enjoy these kind of videos and learn something. I really want to help the community. I really care about you guys. And I'll always answer any question that I can in the comments. I just want everybody to have the best experience possible. And I want to really recommend that you try my HLSL settings. I'm going to leave a link in the description where you'll just click it and you download it, and it'll be my HLSL settings. And the reason that I really strongly recommend that you use my HLSL settings for a couple reasons. One, because if you're on your way to making your own custom bezel art with this technique, you're gonna find that it's all about getting MAME to look as good as it can, making MAME look beautiful. And with my HLSL, I'm a perfectionist artist. I'm an obsessive compulsive person. I have to have everything looking as perfect as it can. And I'm an old man who grew up playing all these games in the arcade, and I remember what they look like. I know what it's supposed to look like. And I've really taken the time to get my HLSL looking good. And I've never seen anywhere online and forums, Reddit, YouTube, anywhere where anyone has made proper HLSL settings. I think everybody else's HLSL settings really looks like crap, and I don't know why that is, but for some reason that's just the way it is. And with my HLSL settings, you are going to have a really good looking experience on MAME. And it's going to be authentic, it's going to be accurate to what you're supposed to see, it's going to look great, and it complements well with the kind of bezel art style that we're working on. So I'm going to put a link in there, so all you're going to have to do is download my HLSL. You can make a backup of your stuff, in case for whatever particular reason you don't like it because you have particular tastes, that you want a certain kind of a look. But try them out for real, because they match this technique perfectly and they look amazing. And as far as how to install the HLSL, if you're like a very if you're a beginner and you really don't even know how to put the HLSL in, just click on my name in the video and search my channel. I have guides and tutorials on how to install HLSL, and they should be pretty beginner friendly. The only issue is depending on what version of MAME you're running on. That's the only problem, is that I can upload a video today telling you exactly how to do all this bezel stuff and HLSL stuff, and it's all perfect, but by the time you look at the video, maybe MAME has upgraded and you're on a new version of MAME and something's changed, and so the old methods of the past are no longer going to work. I try as hard as I can to keep putting out new content that covers any of the changes, to keep things current and up to date. But, hopefully you at least get the concepts, even if MAME has gone to a version where it requires some sort of change to function. And for this particular video, I'm on MAME 0.174, even though I do have MAME 0.175 and I think even 0.176, but nothing significant was really changed in my mind for the newer ones, and I just tend to use 174 at the moment. I do have a MAME any for 175 that includes the 2 lines of text that were changed in regards to vector beam smooth and removing a line about vector anti-aliasing. So I can put the links for MAME 175 HLSL under this description area, but I'll also put the link for the MAME 174 HLSL in the links under the description area. And this 174 HLSL works with MAME 172, 173, and 174. And then the 175 HLSL should work for 175, 176, and maybe a couple of futures, unless depending on if they change something. Now, if you are older than MAME 172, I do have just as good HLSL settings for the really old versions, but they're in older videos. You'll just have to check my channel and look for those. The reason I'm not that worried about posting them under this video is because I assume most people aren't using really old versions of MAME. The 174 or the 175, there should be 2 versions that you could pick one of those and probably be good to go, depending on if you're at 175 or higher, or if you're just a little below 175 like I am currently. I like to stay on the 174, just keep things simple, and you should be good to go with those. But like I said, if you need some really old version, just check my channel. I've got HLSL that's always stayed pretty true throughout the years, and it's I've got different versions out there. And thank you again for watching the video. Really sincerely, good luck making your own custom bezel art, and I look forward to all the contributions to the community. And if you make some really cool bezel art, put a link in the comment section, and we can talk about it and check it out. Maybe I'll do some video reviews. You know what I mean? I'd be happy to see some cool new bezel art out there. And just stay creative, and just don't get stressed out, and just relax and have fun and make whatever you want to make. And you'd be surprised how easy it is to start making some pretty badass bezel art. And there's no limitations really once you really start to understand what you can do. And in this video I didn't cover all the technical advanced features of GIMP. I might do that in another video, like an advanced guide to making bezel art. But you can do pretty much anything. It's ridiculous the amount of stuff you can do artistically if you really spend enough time on it. And I would say that if you download GIMP and you've watched this video and you understand how to make the bezel art, but you just don't understand the capabilities of GIMP and you're unfamiliar with the software GIMP, there are some pretty badass YouTube instructional videos out there, not by me, but by other people, that cover everything you need to know about GIMP and its full capabilities. So just do a little searching, and you'll probably find some pretty awesome GIMP tutorial videos that cover everything you need to know. So that's about it. I just wanted to kind of throw that little last bit in there just to let people know. Try the HLSL settings I want to provide. I don't think you're going to regret it at all. Keep in mind that even though I didn't get too advanced in this video, I might make a video in the future with some super advanced techniques if anyone's interested, and we'll just see how that goes.